Don't be
Everybody,
nervous,
welcome
Tim.
to Tim's Vinyl Confessions, and it is time once again to commence another deep dive series. I love doing these, and I can think of no better person to do the initial episode
Yeah.
for this particular band with. We are going to go through this series, the entire studio catalog of one Night Ranger, and we're starting off with their first album from 1982, Dawn Patrol. I've got my good buddy Andy Parker here. Hello, sir.
Tim, oh my God, thank you so much. I'm honored to talk about this band that I love so much and to talk about Dawn Patrol. And I'm impressed you have vinyl. I don't have vinyl, but I do have, let me show you here. Not that it matters to anybody, but I do have three variations of the CD in front of me. Look, I even got this one here, this
Well, I'll tell you what,
the
and
compact disc
I've got
record
two of
club
those
version.
three. I'm curious now. What are the backs of those? Okay, I've got that one,
The
the Rock
rock
Candy.
candy is stellar.
Highly recommended, folks.
Uh,
Upgrade, upgrade.
so
Yeah,
this here,
that's I've got that one.
record club, right?
Yep.
This one is the Boardwalk version. I think it's Boardwalk. Let me double check. Or MCA, sorry.
What's the Okay, so that's the first MCA issue.
Yes.
The second one has the yellow background because
Yeah,
that's the one
this.
I have. Yeah.
Yes. And then of course Rock Candy has just a variant of
Yeah, the Rock Candy
which
very
they
so
they do a
far
great job. Good on
So
them.
far, Rock Candy have done the first two Night Ranger albums, and I recommend them both, even if you've already got them, because you will hear things you
Yeah.
never heard before. They did such a great job remixing them and making everything, if nothing else, making everything louder, because those early CDs are quiet.
That always the complaint. The first two were so quiet, and as a fan, you always had to crank this up a little bit. Or if you're making a mixtape back in the day when we made mixtapes, this was always the low spot of the CD, of the
Mixed
cassette.
CDs were worse, right? Because
Yeah,
if you put a song from one of these old CDs against a brand new one, the next song that come on would knock
absolutely.
you off your feet. But yeah, so this is now this is not the I know there's a rare variant of this with a different it's gonna go right on my head, a different management
Yes.
logo on here. What I've got here is a US version that was on it's a boardwalk version, but it's also yeah, it's got the stamp here. It's an RCA Music Service version.
Okay.
But so yeah, Night Rangers. So their first album, this band came from, some of the members were in the band Rubicon. They were going to be called Stereo.
Mhm.
They were just going to be called Ranger. Had to change to
Yes.
Night Ranger. These are fairly common stories, but I've said this many times, but for a debut album, man, does this sound accomplished and professional, and this does
Yeah.
not sound like a new band.
No, this was I've said this before on another podcast I used to be a part of. Not, the phrase I like to say is they were something I didn't know I needed. All right. I was a Kiss guy, hard rock. I I was lucky enough to see Night Ranger on their first tour opening for
Oh,
Kiss in
that would have been so
1983.
cool.
Yeah, and I didn't know how cool it was at the
On
time.
my favorite Kiss album too.
Yeah, the Creatures tour. And
Yeah.
a good friend of ours, Brent Walter, he always, whenever we were going to see a band, we were young, we were 12 and 13 years old. And whenever we went to see a band, Brent always would go to look at who the opener was. And Night Ranger was the opener for this tour. And he calls me, he's like, dude, he goes, you got to hear this. And I think we knew of Don't Tell Me You Love Me, but we didn't know the album. And it's one of those things that when I heard it, I I didn't know how much I needed this because it was more than because I was still my musical identity was I didn't know what I was doing yet. I'm
Right.
12 years old. I don't understand. I mean, I grew up with my mom and dad playing Beach Boys and Janis Joplin and Neil Diamond, and I thought that was music. And then I get Kiss, but then you get this, and Night Ranger is melodic, and they're not just writing this songs with distortion and they're talking about girls and having sex they may have never really had. They're writing songs that are gritty and telling stories. They're storytellers.
Yeah.
And while the casual fan may not see it that way, but I'm telling you, and you know this, you dig deep into this catalog especially the first two, well, the first five albums, honestly. But say Dawn Patrol, Midnight Madness, which are written about the same time. These songs are they're haunting, they're creepy. You got such great, and we'll talk about each song, but I mean, these songs put you in a mood, man. I mean, I don't know what a Night Ranger was or is, but I sure as hell wanted to be one.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah,
And that was a thing. Like I never felt that way. And again, I grew up loving Kiss, but Night Ranger was a different beast. And thankfully, this version of Night Ranger is still playing today, and you can go
yeah.
see them, and you should. If you can, you
3/5
should.
intact, by the way. That's
Yes.
rare.
And they are so good, even at 43 years into their
Yeah,
career.
yeah. When you've got a band with two singers and both those singers still really sound, the voice is the first thing to go, right? You
Absolutely.
got to
And
start
Jack is,
lowering keys and lowering keys, or you get cases where the singers are kind of oblivious to the advancing years. But then you go to see a band like Night Ranger, which I got the pleasure of seeing a couple of years ago, and it brings me to a quote that Dee Snider said once. He said, "When you see a band that is not on their game, and the singer can't sing like they used to, it makes you feel old. But when
yeah.
you see a classic band and they're still bringing it, and the singer's still bringing it, it makes you feel young." And
It,
Night
it
Ranger still brings that. There's still this
yeah.
youthful vitality to
It
what they
takes you
do.
back.
Yeah,
So for that hour and a half, you can be 15 again with your buddies. You got your arm around your buddy and you're singing, Sentimental Street, and you're just
yeah.
you, nothing matters for that hour and a
Yeah,
half.
exactly, exactly. You can be having the worst, you know.
And these guys are still the energy level is still there. They're
Yeah,
not
they don't.
slowing down.
They are the last. They are the last band that I would say all they do is just stand there. No, far from it. They're all over the stage. They're playing to the crowd. Um, yeah, it's funny because Dawn Patrol. We'll get into the track by track, but Dawn Patrol was the last of the first five Night Ranger albums. Wait, now, yeah, the last of the first five Night Ranger albums that I actually heard. So I started a little late. I started in '89 with Seven
Okay.
Wishes. I
Okay.
found a used copy of Seven Wishes. I remember the songs, especially the Seven Wishes era, because that's really when I first started listening to the top 40 radio.
Yeah.
I found that cassette for a couple of bucks. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember these guys because you know I'm
Yeah.
up here in Canada where Night Ranger were never that big.
Yeah.
Okay, they were never that big up here. They had Midnight Madness was a gold record. Sister Christian was a number one song. Went to number one up here. I will. That's my brag. That's my one bragging right when it comes to Night Ranger in
You've
Canada.
got that over us in America.
Yeah, but um, they just weren't. They didn't tour here that
Yeah.
much, so
That's a
they
shame.
were just they were a band. Maybe it was growing up on the border and listening to as much American radio that I was so familiar with them. But I bought Seven Wishes, remembered what I liked about them so much. Heard all the other songs. I found Big Life in a markdown
Mm,
place at my local record store. They had a little markdown section, so I'm like, okay, I like this band. I got to find their other albums, and I wasn't 100% sure how many albums they had. I knew that I didn't think they went back as far as the '70s, at least in this incarnation, right?
right.
Um, I would find out later that their credentials go farther back, but I got that year. I'd always give my mother a list of cassettes that I wanted for Christmas, right? And that
Absolutely.
particular year, I knew they had a greatest hits out, and I also knew, and this has happened different times. I get into a band after they've broken up. I've done that so many times, or at least broken up for a few years. Like when it happens, it's like that's forever. You don't
Yeah.
know they're going to get back together, which of
Right.
course they did. But so I asked for the greatest hits, and when I got that, that was the first time I heard anything off Dawn Patrol. That's the first time I ever heard "Don't Tell Me You Love Me" or "Sing Me Away."
Oh my gosh.
And it wasn't until that following summer, so summer of 1990, that I got farther in. I think we went to Bangor, Maine, which is like a yearly thing. And they'd always, if you were looking for, whether it was the older Journey stuff or the older Sammy Hagar, or that summer it was Y&T, it was all about Y&T. I was looking for Y&T, and I
Yeah.
found, you found deeper catalog stuff the farther down that you went. And I found Dawn Patrol. And I've always thought that Dawn Patrol is a little bit different than the albums that follow. It's a very dark album. It kind of the album is it's kind of like the album cover. It's a darker album. Now I don't mean it's gothic,
No, no.
but you know what I mean? Like it's not as bright and sunshiny
Yes.
as the later stuff, as great as it is. There's a character about this album that's just a little bit different, and I'm not sure what
Yeah,
that is.
you get into Seven Wishes and Big Life, and they're kind of, I mean, Big
They're
Life's kind of a
feel
happy
good,
album.
they're feel good songs where really just about every song on those
Yeah.
albums could conceivably have been a single. There were no,
Yeah. They had a song called Color of Your Smile.
yeah,
Just a
this
fun
was
little, yeah, yeah.
this was
But
not
this one has, I mean, you had Eddie's coming out tonight. You got Call My Name. These are gritty
play
underbelly
rough.
of the
Like
city. Play rough.
not the song Night Ranger. I couldn't believe. So like I said, that was the last album of the original five that I heard.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how heavy that song. Not just like even when it first came on, just dun, 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 dun. I'm
Just
like, this
creeps.
is, and then I'm like, okay, it's fading. Now what's going to happen? Jigga 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 jigga.
And
And
it
double
just
bass
punches you.
drums, and I'm like, I was not expecting that. I
Yeah.
didn't know they had songs like this in
It's
their repertoire.
exciting.
That was really cool.
So what now? So when you discovered it and you go back and you got the whole album, what was your
So
like?
I'd
Did you
already
did you
had
love this, or you're like, wait a minute,
no, I loved it. I
I grew to
absolutely
love
loved it.
this
I
poppy
was
version, and I get
that
this
was the
gritty version.
last that was the last piece of the puzzle. That was all the Night Ranger I thought I was going to hear because I had all the other albums at that point. Um, so let's get into the track by track.
Let's
I
do
mean,
it. I love it.
I remember kind of like what you said. So I was familiar with at this point when I got the greatest hits, I'd heard all of Seven Wishes and Big Life. I hadn't yet gotten Midnight Madness or Man in Motion, although I soon would.
Yeah.
But when I first heard Don't Tell Me You Love Me, it was again, where has this song been? And I have called this song a melodic thrill ride because every second of this song is a hook. You
Yes.
get the contrast between the clean, jangly guitar intro and the heavy guitar chords. The drums are thunderous. Great production from Pat
Hmm.
Glasser, and the Rock Candy remaster really brings that out.
Yeah.
But a really good, solid, bottom heavy production that they did not have really until Man in Motion again,
Right.
because I like those albums in between. They're pretty soft productions, really, like especially the
They
drum sounds.
yeah, they sound somewhat synth or techno manufactured. So if you want
Yeah,
to say that,
and I don't mean that in a bad way, but there's something more, a little bit more raw um, about the way that Dawn Patrol is produced, which contrasts the hooks in the song so well. So, by the time that the first chorus comes around, I'm in. Like I'm totally in, and it comes around again. The Jeff and Brad solos, you know,
that's the
perfection.
introduction. That's the
Yeah,
first song you hear.
yeah,
Anybody hears of this?
perfection. And the ride out solo,
Yeah.
it's like that's like the thank you for listening.
And then
Like we're going to
and
give you
stay
one
tuned.
more thing to remember about this song the last time, and then
Absolutely.
it ends. It doesn't drag. It doesn't fade out. It just done. It's a cold
Dun.
ending.
And it's kind of it's punchy. Dun dun dun
Yeah,
dun.
like it
And
is. It is.
your heart levels up a little bit.
Yeah, it's yet it's catchy as all hell, but you're singing and you're banging your head, and there's something about this band. They do that so well. It
yes.
never sounds forced. It never sounds like it sounds like they just made music like this because they wanted to make feel good melodic music. And I know that
Right.
they've often referred to what they do as stainless steel. And
Yes.
that's kind of that's a good description because there's something very clean and very pristine about what they do, but yet there's an edge.
But they were friends with Motley Crue.
Yep.
So you think about it, even bands like Motley Crue are these bad boys of rock. I mean, they sang backup on a Night Ranger song,
Yep.
Night Machine, and they're friends. I mean, those guys, as badass as Motley Crue was, they like Night Ranger.
Yeah.
And Tim,
Night
you
Ranger
can probably
had
speak to it better than I can. Let me
yeah, Night Ranger
ask you
had the
this.
respect. Um, they had the respect of, well, I think one of the reasons that they had the respect that, say, bands later on like Bon Jovi didn't have, let's say, in the, say, metal community, the
Sure.
headbanging community. They came with a lot of cred because of Brad Gillis's gig with Ozzy. I think that
Absolutely.
immediate, and then you get the reputation with Brad and Jeff being in the guitar magazines and being not, here Van Halen were big, they started out big and they stayed big. So everybody wanted to play like Eddie Van Halen. Well, here comes two more guys that had every bit as, much the chops and were
Yes.
doing what Eddie did. And like Eddie, they were not soloing for the sake of it. You could sing those solos. There was always
They
they were always playing for the song. So
right.
now
They
here's a band
complimented.
that doesn't have, it's not like plenty of great bands, but it's not like a band like Dokken where everybody talks about George Lynch, this great guitar player. Here's a band with two great guitar players. And I think that's why they always had the respect that a lot of bands that play what you might call poppier rock
Yes.
have.
And they would trade solos too. So in
Yes.
one song, you're going to get not just one spoken solo, you might get two.
Yeah.
And they were both different styles.
Very different.
So it
Yep.
wasn't like you had just two shredders, which they both were, but Brad has such a style with his using the whammy bar. And Jeff is your technical guy. Jeff was the eight finger technique that no one was doing until he did it. It may have been done beforehand, but he really made it
Not
something.
it may have been done beforehand, but not by anybody playing that type of music.
And so let me ask you, I was going to ask you this a minute ago, because this is what I always thought was unique about Night Ranger. In that era, when they came out, was there any other bands doing what they were doing? There's
So
plenty
this
of
is
AOR and middle of the road, or what they call melodic rock. There are plenty
right.
of bands. I think
Yeah,
the aforementioned Y&T might fall into that category.
right.
But were they doing? I never found anybody that sounded like Night Ranger
No,
ever
Night Ranger to me have always occupied a unique, I'm going to call it niche um, within
within a
rock
niche.
bands because, and I'm speaking in generalities here, but you have bands like Journey and Foreigner and REO Speedwagon, rock bands,
Yeah.
just rock, no descriptor, just rock bands that got played on the radio. But then you'd have, like I said, Bon Jovi, and then, like, say, Def Leppard, Van Halen, later on White Snake. Those were hard rock bands.
Yes.
Night Ranger's somewhere in between. They strike this perfect balance in between because they weren't hard rock all the time, and yet they could rock as hard as anybody given the right song or depending on what came out. So they're kind of in this middle category, which kind of puts them all by themselves. Yes, there were bands that were like AOR bands. Yeah, AOR is a good way to term it. And there were a lot of those bands in the late 70s, early 80s. And I'm thinking about bands like April Wine, got to be appropriately Canadian. Well, actually, Triumph were doing about the same type of thing too. And you had Loverboy. I'll skip. I'll switch from the Canadian stuff. Just there's a lot of bands from Canada that were
But
kind
that's
of
a
doing
solid
that.
that's a solid comparison.
Yeah, but
Loverboy
then
just
you had
seemed more pop.
Jefferson Starship, right? With Mickey Thomas at the time when they were doing like Jane and songs like that. But you didn't have. But those bands weren't, say, anything like Van Halen or Kiss. Night Ranger bridged those worlds. And what's really amazing about it to me is that when you hear Rubicon, you're like, where did that come from?
I've always wanted to ask that question. Like, how
Be-
did we go from this
yeah,
funk
because
Sly and the Family Stone?
I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you, Andy. I'm gonna confess this in front of people. 1995, I was crate digging, bunch of records for 50 cents each, and I'm like, well, might as well look. And I found the first Rubicon album,
Oh wow.
which, if you've ever seen it, it looks heavy. It's got a Minotaur on it. Like it's a
Yeah.
heavy looking album. And I'm looking at the back cover and I'm like, well, this has Jack Blades and Brad Gillis.
Yeah.
This
This is
has
gonna
got to sound
rock.
something like Night Ranger.
Yeah.
So I bought it.
Oh, what a shock.
It was not in my collection very long.
What an absolute shock.
I did not know enough about the band to know that Yeah, okay, Jack and Brad were in it. They were sidemen. This was a project of Jerry Martini from Sly and the Family Stone, and it sounds an awful lot more like Sly and the Family Stone
Mhm.
than Night Ranger ever would. So it made me
Which,
love Night Ranger all the more. It was like, wow,
if you listen to later Night Ranger, I think it's growing up in California. Jack makes a reference to
the trumpet
Rubicon,
playing. Yeah, yes, but he does it in the context of a good, hard rocking
but a good rock
melodic
song.
song. So
Tim, I was gonna say, you talk about them being metal in a sense when need be. You and I were talking briefly off air. Uh, Hearing aid, the Worst
yes,
Stars.
yeah.
One Brad
What's the
Gillis.
first thing that you think of
What's the most memorable
when I
guitar
think,
solo?
wow, wow? Yeah, Brad's part of that's in the midst of
He
all of this incredible guitar playing.
All these metal guitar players
I wait for that part every
and
time.
his solo. I mean, look, I'm biased. It was the best solo of the bunch. And Lynch is in there. Vivian Campbell's in there. I get it. Craig
Yeah,
Goldie's in there. Brad's solo, perfection, man.
yeah.
And it's the most distinct solo. There's no one else doing what Brad Gillis can do.
No, and yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So Don't
Yeah,
Tell Me You Love Me was I
perfect.
don't ever remember hearing it on the radio up here in Canada, but it was a minor
Yeah,
hit. I think it hit 30, 38 or 39 on Billboard, like it dented the top 40, which at that time you weren't hearing songs like that on the top
no,
40 airwaves.
no.
And I know a lot of people will say they saw the video on MTV. Well, I didn't
Yeah.
have MTV.
Oh, the video was. I longed for that video.
Yeah,
Loved it.
I didn't have MTV, and Much Music did not play Night Ranger that much. So it wasn't until the advent of YouTube that I'm like, all right, what does this video look like? And it's a cool video. I would have gone out and bought the album had I seen it back then.
The train, the simulated train, man, it was
Yeah,
the best. And everybody fighting at the end and pushing, and Fitz at the end bringing up the tail. It's great.
yeah,
It's
it's
fantastic.
cool. Which brings us to song two and the other single from the album, "Sing Me Away." Now, I did hear this on the greatest hits. It's in the same spot, second track. It's the first time I'd heard it.
I
Was
love
on
this
the
song.
greatest hits, and again, this is another perfect example of their ability to contrast, not just contrast, but blend heavy guitar riffing and just good pop melody, good synth.
Kind of ballady.
Pop as in popular. Pop as in it gets in your head
Yeah, not bad. It's
and
earworm.
it doesn't leave. That's not a just there's nothing wrong with good pop.
Yeah.
But to combine that with the heavy guitars and the like the thunderous sounding drums. And what I love about that song is that if you listen to the verse, if you went right from the verse right into the chorus, you'd almost think it was two different songs because it goes to a much lighter feel, but it goes so gradually that it never feels forced,
Right.
and then back into the verse again and
Yeah, the transition works so well because they're chunking along the verses,
yeah,
just that
there's such a pulse
chunking
to it.
along.
Yeah,
And then the keys come in nice. They lay down nice for the chorus.
yeah,
And then you get this nice gang vocal, "Sing Me Away," and
yeah.
it
It's
works
anthemic. Like
wonderful.
it's anthemic. You want to sing along to it just as soon as you hear it.
This is one, we would have these conversations, my friends and I, about, because of our love of Night Ranger, talk about songs like, you're making your ultimate set list for a live show. I need "Sing Me Away"
Yeah.
every time I see him. I never tire of this song. It's a song that's been out since 1982. I do not tire of the song 40 some odd years later. When I see him live, and I've seen him live probably knocking on 40 times, I I want this in the set list every show. There's a
Yeah.
handful of songs that you may get tired of hearing certain songs because you heard them a lot. I never tire of this song, and I still to this day I love this song. My wife loves this song. Comes on, we got satellite radio,
Yeah.
and it'll pop on, and she'll turn it up. She's like, "Gosh, 'cause I really like this song," and
And
I was like, "It's just I don't know what it is."
I have to imagine that, like, part of the story of Dawn Patrol is because they were on Boardwalk Records, which was formed by Neil Bogart, who had come from Casablanca. So he signed Night Ranger. He signed Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. There were a few other bands. Night Ranger and Joan Jett are probably the two biggest ones that were on. The only ones
Boardwalk.
that had much of a career. But Boardwalk went under.
Yeah, well, it collapsed rather quickly.
So I would have to think that has got to account for why Sing Me Away only peaked at 54 or 56. Like
Yeah.
you'd think this would have done better than Don't Tell Me You Love Me because it's a more radio friendly song. It's not as
Hmm.
heavy. Like this should have been a top 10 single.
Listen, I could argue till I'm blue in the face over how many songs off of this.
Well, they've got lots of songs that should have
This
been
is a
top 10.
near perfect album for me. There's
Yeah.
one song that I could do without, but as far as this album, I mean, I can still put this in today and I don't skip. I love it. I love every part of this album. It's not my there's one album I think is a little better than this one, but this one is perfection, near perfection for me.
Yeah, yeah, I can't shoot holes in this album. There's
Right.
everything's done just right. So now you've got um so like I said, I'd heard the greatest hits. So when I first got Dawn Patrol, it starts out with the two songs I knew. So
Yeah.
I've got eight songs in front of me that I'd never heard before. The first one of those is That Night She Sleeps.
Mm.
And I like the song, but what I've never quite understood is why it's got those bloop, bloop. It's got those
Sure.
little keyboard hits, right?
There's things that don't make sense.
You've
I
got
mean,
a da 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 da. You got a heavy riff. The drums are slamming.
yeah, Fitz needed something to do.
I guess, and
That's
usually
the
the
thing I
keyboards
justify it.
are blended just right, but that always threw me off. Like, where did that come from?
Sure, sure. Yeah, that totally justifiable. Uh, this is another. I mean, I'm gonna sound like a broken record on this whole show, but another great, just a great song. I mean,
It's a great song. It's just that part of the beginning. I've always that's an interesting decision to make. Like, just
dun, 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 dun.
it's
You're checking your head. What?
I mean, it gets your attention, but I mean, normally, like what Fitz does was just right. Like I love the boom, 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 boom. That sort of like
Look,
that has an ambience to it.
yeah,
That
Fitz was a genius.
he was a secret weapon.
Um, his when he left, it changed things a little bit, but yeah, Fitz was. Yeah, like he was a little bit of the glue to this band. I mean,
I think so.
the talent of that band, the original line. This isn't the original lineup, obviously, but the original lineup of this band was just perfection. Everything was great.
Yeah.
There's nothing
And
you would have changed. And Fitz was legendary.
I think was probably the oldest
Yeah,
guy in the
and
band
the most experienced because
because he goes back to the I first he was on the second Montrose album,
yeah, he was on
Paper
Montrose.
Money.
Yeah.
So then he was in Sammy's band for quite a few years, played bass and keyboards.
Hmm.
So yeah, he had years of experience. But yeah, I think you're right. I think he is the bridge between the heavy guitars and the drums and the
And
melodies.
a great writer.
Yes.
He wrote great parts. I mean,
Yeah,
I
when
know
you
we're not
look at the
talking about
songs that he
Midnight Madness,
co-wrote, they're
but
generally
Sister Christian, that piano part
yeah,
that we all know and love.
yeah,
It's Alan Fitzgerald.
yeah.
It's the best.
Next up, we get one of my favorite Night Ranger ballads, but it's dark. Call My
Arguably
Name.
one of the greatest.
What an epic song. I can understand why this wasn't pushed as a single, but what a trip this takes you on. And you're right. And I think it's mostly Jack, but these songs tell stories.
Call My Name. It's
He
gritty.
creates characters, he tells stories.
It's this is when I tell people when I talk about this album is a darkness to it or a grittiness, using your term darkness. This is one of the ones you say, listen to the song. And this is like an episode of Law and Order happening or something. You can this sets a tone, it sets a mood, and you like it. It's sometimes we like to be a little darker. We like to be a little, we don't always want to be riding at pop level.
Yeah,
This song lays down and it stays there and it's wonderful.
yeah.
And of course, we've talked before. There is a modern version of the song they did with the Youth
Temporary
Symphony
Youth
Orchestra.
Yeah.
That
Highlight of that album.
if you didn't think you could make this song any better,
Yeah.
and then they do, and you're
They
like,
do. They do. Yeah.
oh God,
Yeah. Sometimes those orchestra albums are hit and miss.
absolutely.
This is one of the good ones.
But
But especially this song, it
that
just lends
version,
itself to that. It's theatrical. Like
it's
you can
meant
almost see
for,
a musical playing out.
and they didn't know it when they wrote it, but at that time, this is meant to have a symphony behind it. It was
Yep.
perfection for it. And if you talk to a lot of the diehard Night Ranger people, and you know a lot of them, they'll all say the same thing. That was the best version of this song.
Yeah.
It just it strings are keeping that hauntiness along. Yeah, it's perfect, man.
Oh,
Perfect.
you got the sirens at the end of it. It just seems like, you've got this nightmarish scenario, and then it calms down and it ends like it began.
Just beautiful little piano
Yeah.
and
It
Jack.
and the vocals never over the top. It's very measured. It's an amazing song. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's. I have a love affair. I love this song, and again, I don't know. I'm gonna listen to it when we get off here. So
Actually, you know
it's
what? I just realized now that we've gotten to the end of side one, I'm lying. There was a third song on Greatest Hits that I knew that I no, no. That is correct. It's only on the CD, so I hadn't heard it at this point. The
all
first
right.
time I heard Eddie's Coming Out Tonight was when I got Dawn Patrol.
Oh my God.
And what a way to pick the pace back up. You don't even notice that the pace had slowed down because Call My Name is such an intense song. But you get that, like Sing Me Away, it's got that ominous synth note and one of the best guitar riffs.
Dun,
Da
dun,
da
dun,
da.
dun, dun. Then
And when Fitz comes in, wow, wow, like the keyboards actually add a little bit of menace, which is normally
like,
the opposite than what keys do. So that's the hands of a master right there.
well, and this is just like a continuation. You go from this gritty street "Call My Name" song to now you're meeting Eddie, and he's the story of this guy who's living the which I later didn't even know what the word was to learn the tenderloin life. Again, I said before there are certain songs I need to hear live.
Yeah.
Eddie's one of them. I would to the end of time. You could put this in every set list live. It's fantastic. It is a crowd favorite. It is a fan favorite. Eddie is one of the again. It tells that story. You know. Like I said, I didn't know I wanted to be a Night Ranger. I also kind of want to be Eddie, and I wanted to be
Maybe
out.
Eddie is the Night Ranger.
Well, there's the story. There's a little bit of rumor there.
Yeah, I
There's a
thought
rumor
that,
in the air, so to speak.
yeah, I thought, and because even, I mean, I bought the cassette first, but even the CD and even the vinyl, there's no lyric sheet. I thought it said, he lives a tender, boring life.
Yeah, I didn't even. I just yeah, I made a gibberish word. I don't.
Even if I'd have known what it actually said, it still wouldn't have made any sense
It
to me.
doesn't make sense
You
now that
have
we
to know the
know.
context.
Years later, we know.
Yeah,
But like the way Jack, this song, I think specifically is one of the greatest examples of Jack's writing lyrically,
yeah,
because this tells such a story. This is like a little movie. And he talks, he sets he sets it up, and the way he describes this guy and this grittiness of the street and the dark, it's this is the kind of if I could be a songwriter, this is the way I would want to write my
yeah.
songs. I would want to be telling stories like
You
this.
know, it's very similar to Rockin' America because he
Yes.
introduces the guy, then he introduces the girl.
Yeah.
This is much grittier, but it's the same type of thing. Like and you can picture these people without even seeing them. You're like, okay, yeah, I kind of get it.
Yeah.
But
It's
oh, it's so good, and rightfully so as far as a set list because even if you've never heard the song, and say Night Ranger were uh, opening for another band, I can't see how you couldn't get into this if you like guitar music.
you can't because the just that dun, 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 dun,
Yeah,
it's a
like,
rocking song. Your hands are going up and you're like you're chunking your head along.
and it never really lets up, and it builds to that crescendo. You
Yeah, and
know,
you got the solo where they're kind of holding notes and the
yeah,
Eddie's coming out, the Eddie's coming. Oh, it just
yeah,
keeps building and the whole
yeah.
time they're
You like to
soloing
rock.
over it.
It's an anthem. It's
And it
another
gets
anthem.
chaotic at the end and they just holds.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
I love it. I
amazing.
love it. I love it.
Woo! So now, side two
Yes, sir.
starts with another dark, gritty tale of the street. Can't find me a thrill.
Yeah,
Like cocaine and women, they treat you the same.
they do. That's the word. I mean, I wouldn't know personally,
Yeah.
but that's the rumor. That's what the kids say.
Um, but what a great song. Like, and again, it starts off with that ominous da-da-da-da, like I'm in for it. I want to know what's going to go on. Um, and there's such passion in the vocal, you know?
Yeah.
Like when he says, God, I wish I was home.
Yeah, I mean, think about that. These guys, and they haven't really been out on the road so much, but they're writing about, you know, wish I
Well,
was
I mean,
home.
Jack and Brad anyway, and certainly
Well,
Fitz,
yeah, I guess
they have a good half decade of
yeah, I
work,
guess
right?
they kind of had. I guess I really shouldn't have thought about that because they kind of had a, um, and Kelly joined Rubicon at the end too. By the way,
Yeah,
Kelly,
yeah.
not to, I just remember that as we were talking about that. So
Which is
yeah,
interesting because that's the same three guys that are still together today.
it just works, and
Yeah.
I think the brilliance of those three guys is they knew it.
And that's another thing about this band that we haven't mentioned yet is how great it is that you've got two good, really good singers in Jack and Kelly. They don't sound anything alike, but they complement each other well, and they seem to know just which songs each of them would sing for the most part.
Sure,
I know later on there was pressure for Kelly to sing the ballads, but usually
but
it was just the right singer for the right song.
yeah, you think about that. Like Jack wrote, you know, goodbye,
Yeah.
but gave it to Kelly to sing, and maybe it sounded better. I don't know. I mean, I'd love to hear a
I've
Jack version of it.
I heard it. I heard an interview with Rick Ocasek before he died, and they asked him. I think it was with David Frick from Rolling Stone. Was like, how did you split up the vocals between you and Ben Orr?
Yeah,
And he said Ben would just sound better on certain songs,
it's
like Drive, like
think about yeah, Drive is one of my favorites. Same with the Eagles. Like, how did you
yeah,
choose
the
between
Eagles, Toto,
Henley
Triumph.
or
I
Glenn
mean,
Fry? How did you choose which phenomenal singer is going to sing which song?
yeah,
And I think similarly, they said that like when they did like Hotel California, for example, Don just sounded better singing it,
yeah.
which he does because Don's got a more of a grittier, rougher voice. But yeah,
So
that's great.
you
Anyway,
get like two for the price. You get it's almost like not like having two bands, but there's just it's cool. And it's like, listening to the Kiss albums. You get Paul and Gene, and occasionally you'd have Ace or Peter chime in, but most, you always have Paul or Gene sing, you know, trading off.
yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Music is the greatest thing.
There's nothing wrong with bands that have one singer because most bands are like that, but it's just cool when you get not just one guy that sings most of the time. Like, okay,
Go.
I'm gonna pick on Tom Peterson from Cheap Trick. I love Cheap
Okay.
Trick.
Yeah.
Tom Peterson is not Robin Zander.
No, God, no. Nobody is.
So So when you have two really good like equals as far as vocals go, it's cool that when they divide up the vocals because there's a little bit of listener fatigue that you don't get,
Right.
because it's not the same tone you're hearing all the time. They had different vocal ranges. Yeah, it just works.
And it's
Just don't.
different styles. Kelly's
Yeah,
always come across as more of a bluesy singer to me,
yeah,
where Jack is more of your kind of harder rocker guy.
yeah.
And it's two different styles. So when you're playing a song, it's like, hey, try this, see what you think. And like, oh, Kelly, that sounds better. You singing it. Sing it. And there's no ego in it, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not in the meetings, but I mean, the fact that they
Well,
don't,
they
I
don't
want to sing
strike
this song.
they don't strike me as that type of, but also how, I mean, the thing about Night Ranger is that there's a lot more recorded, I'm sure, than we've ever heard. That would be really cool to get super deluxe versions of some of these albums. But how weird would it be to get a version of a song that all
Yeah.
your life you've heard one of them sing, and you hear the other guy sing, and it's like that's so weird.
I'll tell you this, before I was on another Night Ranger based podcast, and we would talk a lot about there's got to be vault songs, right?
Yeah,
And from
every band's
everything
got vaults.
everything we ever got from the guys when we would have chances to interact with them, they really hinted that there really wasn't. I mean, there might be a couple, but there was no like there's not going to be an unreleased album coming out. There's just
Yeah.
they kind of wrote what they wrote, and they may have scrapped stuff and just like, well, we just never finished it. But I was like you, I'm like, there has to be something sitting around. Just give us that. And
Well, I mean, in all
we've
this
never
time, like,
gotten it.
you
Never
know,
gotten it.
Night Ranger fans know. I mean, there's songs like there's Wild and Innocent Youth and there's Girls All Like It. They
Yeah.
didn't do a lot of B-sides either. There weren't a lot
No,
of extra songs. They seemed to say, okay, we've got these songs, let's polish these ones up and get make them as good as
exactly.
we possibly can.
And
But I
even on
mean,
their latest album, ATBPO, they put out they had a song called was it Wasted Time as a kind of a B-side. Great song, should have been on the album.
yeah, yeah, that was
I don't know
a
if you got to hear that one. It's great. I saw them do it live once. It was amazing,
yeah.
amazing.
I wish I'd like to see, both of those songs end up on a CD, but yeah. Um, so moving on, we
Yes,
get
sir.
to one. We go from a heavy, really heavy song to just pure sort of California.
Yeah,
This is the sunshine stuff that I talked about that you got a lot of on Midnight
like a,
Madness,
like a
especially
breath
Seven
mint. It
Wishes and
felt
Big O.
good. Well,
Yeah,
let's cleanse
Young
our
Girl in
palate real
Love.
quick.
This is just a good piece of, I don't know, power pop. Like it's just
Yeah,
good.
and it's good. It's not even the stuff that because you want this rougher, grittier stuff. This is a fun little interlude. You're like, oh, this is nice. It'll change my tempo a little bit, change my mood a little bit. I like
Yeah.
that, and it's
Yeah,
it's
and
it's a solid
there's
song.
there's not a lot of that on this album.
No, this is a kind of a rocker.
It's a nighttime album, right?
Oh yeah, turn the
Yeah.
lights down a little bit. Let's have some fun.
Next up, another one of my favorites, and this I think maybe might be the song that benefits the most from the Rock Candy, the remastering, Play Rough, especially that
Yes.
that that acoustic intro.
Again, this is when you and I were talking beforehand. Because if you've never seen Night Ranger live, Jack was in Damn Yankees. They play some Damn Yankees songs in concert, and the diehard fans always wish for more Night Ranger, less Damn Yankees because it's a Night Ranger fan. This is one that I'm like, please play this song. I will forego high enough if you'll play rough for me. Um, y- you're not gonna get it like that, but God, it is such a fan favorite. It's such a great song. It's such a rocking song. It's
I
such a
really wished I could have seen the Dawn of Madness tour.
I did, and I saw it in Cleveland, and it's such joy. My wife was looking at me because I was so happy, and I was like, "You don't understand this," because my wife's a Pearl Jam fan. I said, "This is a deep cut for me to hear play rough."
Never
I
thought
just,
you'd hear it live,
I
right?
really didn't,
Yeah.
and and it sounds so good, and you're like, "Why won't you guys do this? Just play."
It is such a live oriented song.
Why don't you want to play it? It's
It
such a
just yeah,
rocker.
for I would think for guitar players you would think this is because when you think about it, I know that Night Rangers covered AC/DC different times live and
Yeah, Dirty
recorded.
Deeds and stuff like that.
This is like Sin City. Down, 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 down. It's that same type of
Oh yeah.
charging riff. It's
It's
got the
just so
Night Ranger.
good.
It's got the Night Ranger touch, but yeah, what a great song. Like, and I've said this, I can't, anytime I'd be in a hotel and they'd have an ice machine, I'd always think of this song. You could carry on like an ice machine. Like,
I
what a
love
great
that line.
line.
I love that line.
It's so descriptive.
You can play dirty, you can play clean.
Yeah,
It's
these were
it's
not, the lyrics were never phoned in.
I love to go back and watch the old again, we saw it on MTV, and I know you said you didn't have MTV. There's a concert, an old concert that MTV used to play all the time, and you got these songs because it
Yeah.
was basically playing Dawn Patrol. That's what they
I've seen I saw the Seven Wishes. Somebody uploaded that to YouTube. I've watched that.
Yeah, if you go, I mean, I guess it's on YouTube. I don't know, but you can go and pull this MTV concert. It was pretty much this album, I think, and some Midnight Madness stuff. But yeah, there's some live footage out there of it. It's pretty cool if you can find it.
Yeah. So next up, we have another poppy song with Penny.
This is the one I skip. I just this is my throwaway on this album. When I said it's near perfection, and I don't hate the song, it never really hit with me, and I can't tell you really why. It just it's okay, and I've seen them do.
It's
They play
okay.
this
I just
live.
don't think it lives up to it. They can't all be. The songs in this album, for the most part, are so strong and
Yeah, in
so
comparison,
well put together. When you bring in a song that's pretty good, it's just going to pale in comparison.
yes, and look, it's a decent track. I'm not saying that. It's just compared to everything else in this album, you could have had 9 cuts on this album, and I think and you could check this with you could talk to someone else who knows more. I believe Penny is a holdover from prior to Night Ranger. This was one that they had in their
I can hear that because it's very poppy.
yeah,
This one and Young Girl in Love have
might
always,
have been in their stereo days, right when
yeah.
they were still trying to figure out what they were going to do. This is one of the songs they had written prior, from my
But
understanding, or parts
I
of it.
still think it's got a pretty cool, for such a poppy song, this one. I still think it's got a pretty cool riff.
Yeah,
Like they always, it's not just one thing. We got a good
yeah.
chorus, just don't worry about the rest. They always put time into every part of the song.
I think with this one for me, it's I love I like the verse. I don't care for the chorus. I think that's my biggest. Now we're sitting here talking about it. I'm trying to think, why don't I really care for the song? And I think deep down, I just don't love the. Again, who am I to criticize anybody about
Right.
songwriting?
Yeah.
But
It's just how it hits you, right?
as a fan, the verse is fine for me. It's the chorus just doesn't really do much for me in comparison. Because again, you've got Play Rough, you've got just Sing Me Away. You get so much
Where
good
the
on this.
chorus is just bring it home.
And I was like, it's okay. Move
Yeah.
on, skip, and then get to the final song, which
Oh,
is
the epic.
just
We talked before we started recording. So of the first five albums, so this would have been the last of those songs that I heard because it's the last song on this album. This one threw me for a loop. I had no idea they had songs this heavy. Not
this is
just the beginning of it, which is heavy in and of itself, but that midsection.
yeah.
And the other thing that I that this the song Night Ranger brings up for me is the influence that they had on other bands that very few bands mention Night Ranger as an influence, but um, at that time, so that would have been summer 1990, I was, and I still like them, but I was way into Tesla.
It's funny you
Way,
say that. Look at the shirt I'm wearing.
oh, awesome.
I
Way into
just
Tesla.
by sheer happenstance I'm wearing a Tesla
And
shirt.
when I heard that midsection where they're trading off solos in Night Ranger, I immediately thought of Coming at You Live.
Oh
Trey
yeah,
Cannon and Tommy Skeoch did the exact same thing. I'm like, they're Bay Area. They must
has to
have
be
got that
right.
from this song. They
Oh,
must
I
have.
wonder. Have you ever found out if they?
Well, I know I've seen clips on I've seen clips on YouTube of them jamming together, like some of the guys in Tesla coming up on like I think they did Highway to Hell or
Yeah,
but I know they toured together and I think Tesla opened for them in like 87 before the Def Leppard tour.
yeah,
Um, so I do know that they know each other, but
sure.
it just makes perfect sense when you get a band from the Bay Area that made an impact like Night Ranger did. Now here's Tesla with two guitar players trading, you know. I just always made
Oh,
that comparison. Like this
God,
reminds
this song. I mean, what a surprise if you're just putting this album in for the first time and you're playing it just front to back, letting it go, and then like you said, you get this heavy. I mean, you're talking a melody rocking album, and then you get this just dun, 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 it just sounds heavy,
yeah,
heavy. People gets to the end, you got this crazy double time
it's fast.
part,
Like it's old
and the
school.
dynamic it goes from here and it shoots up, and everything drops out again. Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah,
dun. And they end it with just it's like they're stalking you with this song that's just
yeah,
creeping along. Whatever a Night Ranger is, it's just hunting you
yeah,
and it's going to attack, and there's nothing you can do about it. You know, it's just
yeah.
awesome.
And like, this is another song that
It
I
opens
don't know
with
when they
crickets.
start. I don't know when they started doing it, and you would know more than me. When did they first start doing what we call the one good drummer part live?
God, that goes back. I, I I can't say that it's you could blame it on Carrie, but I feel like it started when Carrie became part of the band. Carrie is a fireball of energy.
Yeah.
I've had luckily I've had a small opportunity to chat with Carrie very briefly, and man, what a fun dude. And I feel like he might have been part of that. I don't know that. I can't say that for sure, but it feels like when he became part of the band, that's when that started becoming, and it's really fun.
So
No
for
one
those
else
that
is
don't
doing it.
know,
Yeah,
the song breaks down in the middle of it, and basically what, everybody leaves the stage except Kelly, who
Yeah.
continues to bash away
Just
on the
dun dun
drums.
dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But one by one, the rest of the guys come out and start hitting cymbals and other drums. And for some reason, Carrie puts a wolf mask on or something.
No understanding whatsoever about why he does that, but it's
No
fun.
context. No.
There's zero. That doesn't mean anything that any of us
Because
can ever.
the two guys that I went with to the when we saw them, like, why does he do that? I'm like, I have no idea.
I know
But
people that could
at
know and
the
they
end
don't
of that
know.
section, Kelly gets on the mic and says, "We make one good drummer," and it's
Yes.
fun.
Yeah, and there's plenty of clips out there you can find it. So many people it's a fan favorite thing now that they do.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, it's
and
expected.
and the band they look like they truly have fun doing it, which I think is neat because again, you got to keep in mind the three core guys have known each other since the 70s.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many old friendships you still have at your age, Tim. I have a handful of guys, and we've had to take breaks from each other. It's like God, they look like for that moment in time, they truly are just having a great time.
Not only not and you think about it, you take breaks. These guys can't. They
No,
work together. Their work is play, but it's work. And
it's work. Yeah,
they're on a bus, and you know they're
and they've heard
sleeping
all
on
the
the bus, or
stories.
they're
You can't. There's no new story to tell them.
yeah,
I heard all your stories 41 years ago. I'm
yeah,
done.
yeah. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's almost like I would imagine that, they look forward to this set part of the set because it's not so much about, well, if I hit that cymbal at the wrong on the wrong beat, no one's going to care.
There's
You know
no
what I mean? Like
structure. There's no structure. Just do it.
it's just it's just like loose. Just have fun. And they obviously think enough about it because, like I said, the one time I saw them, it wasn't a headline; it was opening for Brett, and they did and they did this. So
Yeah.
it was like this has got to be this is obviously part of the set that doesn't change.
Right. Yeah. It's awesome. It's fun. Go see Night Ranger live, people, if you get the chance.
Yes, absolutely. Dawn Patrol. If we haven't convinced you yet, and all you've got is the greatest hits on CD, you got to fix that and start with the best. Start from the beginning.
And work your way progressively, and you watch this band become better at what they do.
Yeah, and
Again, if you
with
like Midnight Madness, you would love this
mhm,
because they were written at the same time.
yeah, yeah, they're very
All these
much
songs are very similar.
to bring it back into a Kiss context.
Oh, let's go. I've got all night.
This is like Rock and Roll Over and Love Gun.
Sure.
If you like one, you like the other. Like it's not
Hell, it's
they're
like their
not worlds
first
apart.
six albums because
Yeah,
those six albums were recorded in 3 years.
yeah, exactly. Um, you know, so we're gonna go through the entire catalog. Well, I'm gonna have a rotating series of co-hosts. But Andy, I want to thank you for helping me kick
Oh,
this one off in a big way.
I'm honored, honored. And anytime you want to talk about one of my favorite bands in the world, I'm always a Zoom call away.
So, where can people? You've got a very cool show. You take part in a very cool show. You tell us about that on YouTube.
Yeah, so I have I'm part of a channel. Me and my partner Gary Kelly. We have a channel called Tummy Twins Media. You can find us on YouTube. We do a couple of shows. Music show we have is called Sonic Legacy, and the idea behind Sonic Legacy, a lot of what Tim is doing, we're just trying to keep great music alive. The younger generations, and this isn't a knock on the younger generations, these bands are fading.
Yeah,
The Night Rangers of the world, like we've talked, they will be forgotten, and that's a shame. So Sonic Legacy, we do our best to honor the legacy of great music, and we talk about any genre, any I guess I've told you before. I just we did an episode about the Power Station, an episode about the band Asia. We always like to talk to people about their iconic songs, something you think will stand the test of time. So we do that with Sonic Legacy, and we have a show called Flick Flops where we review bad movies. We actually watch the bad movies and tell you if it's worth watching or if it's not worth watching. So, we'll watch anything like Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey to Catwoman and tell you this one really is a piece of crap. Don't watch it. But again,
yeah.
tell me Twins Media on YouTube. You can find us. We
I'll
appreciate
have a
it.
link posted to that below,
Thank
and
you.
yeah, we'll have Andy on again for something
Oh, I can't wait.
because why not? All right, folks, that is our deep dive on Night Ranger's debut album, 1982's Dawn Patrol. Get it if you don't have it, and if you want to get the CD, get the Rock Candy
Yeah,
remaster
get
because it sounds
that's the
amazing,
one.
and it doesn't. That's another thing. It doesn't sound like 1982. It doesn't sound dated.
It's so good.
Yeah. All right, everybody. We'll see you later. Go listen to some Night Ranger. Thanks for watching Tim's Vinyl Confession.